was actually a very kind introduction. I think if my parents were here, my father would have really actually enjoyed that. Yeah, but my mother's probably the one that would have believed it. Yeah. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. First and foremost, I just want to commend you for taking some of your free time and wanting to invest back in yourselves. I think that is absolutely excellent, and I'm a big believer in not just career development but personal development. So to be here with you guys and your enthusiasm is just number one in my book. So as I said, I'm delighted to be here. For anyone that missed, my name's Andrew Walsh. My background is actually chartered accounting. I started my career at Ernst & Young many years ago, and from there I moved into commercial enterprise and predominantly property. My last position was actually CFO for a mid-tier facilities management firm, and in the 2 years I was there, we grew that business from a turnover of $15 million to a turnover of $30 million. So the business essentially doubled in size. So you can imagine through that time, I was hiring a lot of people. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, because of that experience. And I might just move on to the next slide. What's going on? Actually, firstly, I just want to apologise too, because I'm a bit sick at the moment. I got some food poisoning last night, so I wasn't able to really interact with you guys out there, and my energy levels are a little bit low, so I've tried to save it all for the presentation. Okay. So you'll see at the top here, Toolbox for the Mind. So this is something that I started last year, and it is focused on business, and its mission is to change the world through business and leave it a better place. So that's the other reason why I'm here, because I want to give back to the business community that's given me a lot over the years. Now you'll see there that it says success, it's a mind game. That's my tagline. And I think everything starts with training the brain. You don't know what you don't know, so you've got to work on this before you can create something out in the world. Yeah? So I want to start with this quote. And I read this quote many years ago, and this was actually the catalyst for Toolbox for the Mind. Everything is created twice, first in the mind, then in reality. So you guys have come here tonight because you want some information, and we're going to be talking about resumes. And then you're going to take that information and you're going to go and create your resumes, or create better resumes, and use that information to make your worlds a bit better from a career perspective. Now we do have limited time tonight, and the slides I have, there's quite a few. I could talk for days on resumes. There's so much to talk about. So I've had to make a few assumptions just for this evening. Okay? So let's talk about the assumptions. So the first one is I'm going to concentrate on the pathways to strategy. As Wayne talked about before, pathways is a subset of PDF, and its focus is on students, recent graduates, and those in their first couple of years of their career. So we're going to be focusing on resumes from that point of view. The next thing I'm going to assume, which I think is fairly fair enough, most of you are looking for jobs in the Australian market. So we're going to just talk about the Australian context. I will touch on a couple of things about overseas, but they're just more for interest. Okay? And the last thing I'm going to assume is you already have a resume. Now, if you don't have one at all, it's okay. We're going to go through an example resume tonight, and I have some copies of a template that's on my website that if you want to take something away with you, you can, although I have to say I didn't anticipate these numbers. So there might not be enough to go around, but you can get it from the website, which I'll show you that website. So let's hit the agenda. So the first thing is, why is it so important? What's currently going on in the Australian marketplace? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk conceptually about some do's and don'ts in your resume. And then, to excuse the pun, I'm going to cover letters. So we're going to talk about some do's and don'ts there too. Now you notice I put resume before cover letter, and that's just because that's your key document, so we just want to focus our attention there for tonight. The next thing I'm going to talk about briefly is social media and the impacts it can have on the employment process, and in particular details that could be on your resume that can be used to find you on social media. And then we're just going to run through where to use your resume. You probably know those things already, and that's okay, but we'll just go through. It's on the extension list, but just a few things that, just in case there's anything that you might have forgotten. And then we'll talk about seeking feedback, because that's really, really important. You should be getting feedback, okay? And we'll talk about how to do that. And then lastly, as I alluded to earlier, we'll talk about, or we'll run through an example resume. Now, you can tell I get super excited, so I talk pretty fast. If at any point in time, any of you finding I'm talking too fast, because there is a lot of content to get through, just let me know, and I'll try to slow down, okay? So let's talk about, briefly, why is it so important? Well, this is why. This is lifted off the ABC News website just a couple of weeks ago. And unemployment is a 12-year high in Australia. So that means there's potentially less jobs, but more people wanting the same job. So it's getting ultra competitive. And for that reason, you need to make sure that your resume is the best it can be. You want to stand out. All right? And just for interest, last year I was looking at this as well, and you'll see this trend towards the end here, and we hadn't hit 6.4% at that point. But now we're there, and if that trend continues, well, there's a good chance that things are only going to get worse, at least in the short term. All right. Let's do an exercise. So to get you in the right mindset, I'd like to do a quick exercise with you. Has everyone been to the supermarket? Yeah? You guys are so quiet. Has anyone not been to the supermarket? Maybe that's a better question. I'm hoping that at least people go there for their groceries or buy a chocolate, soft drink, yeah? No one gets their mum to do all their shopping for them, no? Okay, alright, so the first part of this exercise is very simple. I just want you to think about, if you were a product in the supermarket, what product would you be? And then, why would people buy you? Okay, so just start thinking about that. Now the second part of the exercise, and don't start until I say go, but this is PDF, and PDF, one of the main things about PDF is networking. And we will talk a little bit about networking tonight too, because I think it's ultra important, particularly as you go into your career. So what I would like you to do is, in groups of 2 or 3, turn to the people beside you, and particularly if you don't know them, please shake their hand and tell them who you are, introduce yourself. I would like you to just tell that person what product you would be, and why they should buy you. Not why you think they should buy you, but why they should buy you. Okay, so your turn. If you could do that for 30 seconds, and then I'll get to you right now. Go Alright guys, slow down. I need a microphone up in front of me. Does anyone know why we might have done that exercise? Particularly in the context of resumes? Anyone have any idea? Don't speak all at once.
It's an introduction. The resumes are actually an introduction to yourself, and you're trying to find out the best way to actually introduce yourself, so you actually exceed further than other people.
That's part of it?
Yeah.
Definitely? Young lady in the front?
You're trying to sell yourself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Correct. That's it. So you, that product. Right, so I'm sure all of you have got some idea about marketing, not maybe consciously, but certainly subconsciously, because you've gone out and you've bought things, and when you bought something, you thought about the features it has and the benefit to you. So in the employment process, you're like the product, right, to the employer. You need to sell yourself to the employer. And your resume can be considered your marketing tool or your brochure, all right, for you, the product. Before you ever get to see anyone, they're going to pick that up and that's the first selling document they're going to see. So I just want you to park this idea in your mind, right, and orientate yourself around this as we move forward. So coupled with this, what do you think a resume objective actually is?
Attract attention.
To
attract attention.
To attract attention, yeah, but yes, that's correct.
Get an interview.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And 99% of the time, that's all it is. Its ultimate objective is to get your foot in the door. Okay? So you are the product, your resume is your marketing tool, and the objective of it is to get your foot in the door to get you an interview. So if we hold both those things in our mind, and I'm going to move on to actually some resume do's. Actually, can I just get a show of hands? How many of you are students or just recent graduates in your first couple of years? Can I just get a show of hands just to see how many in the room? Students as well? Yeah, students. Yeah. So it's probably a bit over half. Are the rest of you a few years in, 5 years plus? I know I am. Okay, alright, so it's probably about 60-40. Now, although we're concentrating on a lot of things around people that are recently entering the job market, I still think you'll find that what we're going to go through here is either a good revision or you'll pick up a few little nuggets of information that you can use. Alright? Now, the slide you see here, you'll see at the top it says generic. So I just want to quickly share with you how I update my resume and then how I send it out. Okay? So I have two stages. I will first just update my resume, right? Put all the content in there and try to make it as good as I can. Good enough that if I had to, I could send it off to an employer as is. Right? So that's just the generic stuff. But then what I do is I actually take that resume and I park it to the side, and then for each specific job opportunity, I will tailor that resume. I'll take a copy and we'll talk about some of the things that we do to just give you that little extra edge for each job that you apply for. Okay, so let's just jump in. So the first few are all to do with look and feel. Before you even think about quality content, if the structure of your resume looks awful, hard, not very pleasing on the eyes, then the hiring manager or recruiter, when they pick it up, they're just going to go, oh, I can't read that, next. So structure is really important. You need a nice, good, plain kind of structure. And that's going to go a long way, because that first half a second to a second, that can make the difference. Okay? Coupled with that, now I'm not sure what industries everyone's necessarily working in. Now I've got an accounting background, so I tend to focus on accounting and finance or property looking type resumes. But you need to select a resume that's appropriate to this, appropriate style for the industry that you're in. So just to pick a large contrast, an accounting and finance resume typically will look more plain compared to, say, a digital marketing resume. Digital marketing is a pretty new, funky occupation in the last 10 years, and they want to show off what they can do, so they'll often have splashes of colour and might not even look like a traditional resume. Okay, so just have regard for the style, and again, we'll talk about how to find these things out later. The next thing is font. This might seem very simple, but you need to use a nice, clean, modern font. Times Roman in Word. Most people probably use Word in the room, and if you're a Mac user, there's similar fonts. It makes your resume look tired and old. And even if the person who picks it up doesn't consciously realise it, they're making assessments about that when they look at your resume. So use something like Calibri, for example, in Word. It's just a nice, clean-looking font, and it's much easier to read, particularly when I used to get hundreds of resumes, and I'd often look at them at the end of the day and I'm tired. I want to be able to read very easily. You want to make it as easy as you can for the hiring manager or recruiter to be able to get through your resume and like you. Okay? Next thing, we're going to start to cross over from format to content, but bullet points. There's three things about bullet points. Firstly, they make your resume look tidy, so we're still talking about the look and feel. The second thing is that when you go to write your resume, I know when I first started my career a long time ago now, I had trouble writing down exactly what I was doing for my jobs. bullet pointing is much easier than trying to write paragraphs, and it looks better. Okay? And the third thing is, from a hiring manager's perspective, it's much easier for me to go through those bullet points knowing, and I suggest you do this, you only have 1 point per bullet point, or 1 duty or 1 achievement per bullet point. If I see 5 bullet points, I know there's 5 duties that you've done, and I can tick, tick, tick those off very quickly. Next thing is length. So I know now that we've got kind of a 60-40 split in the room roughly. So for those of you that are students, recent graduates, or in your first couple of years, your resume is typically going to be 1 to 2 pages in length. And that's fine. Don't freak out, don't think you need to have something that's super long. That's perfectly fine. I will say one thing. Has anyone not worked at all? And it doesn't mean professionally, I just mean they've never had a job at all. Everyone's working. Great. Okay, because one of the things I was going to say was, if you are studying and you've never worked before, I suggest you just go out and get some kind of part-time job. And the reason why I say this is I feel very strongly about work ethic as much as I do about the skills the person has. If I know that they're capable and they've got a good work ethic, that means a lot more to me than technical skills, because if they're capable, I can train them anyway. Alright, so I'd like to see that someone's got some kind of working on the belt, a good appreciation for actually being in the workforce. Alright? Now, for those of you who have been in the workforce a bit longer, your resume should be 3 to 4 pages, maximum 5. Do not go over 5 pages. It's too long. And I'm going to switch off and I won't want to read it. Okay? Now, if you've got lots of work experience or you're having trouble getting it all down onto 5 pages, you just need to try a bit harder. And what I suggest you do is the most oldest experience that you've got, that's the ones you condense down the most. Right? And keep the current experience as it is. The only time I would say not to do that, and we're going to talk about specific stuff, but I might just touch this now. When you go to look at a particular job opportunity, if your earlier work experience is more relevant to that job opportunity, you might decide to expand that and condense somewhere else. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? Okay. Next thing's this, be specific. You probably go, what do you mean by be specific? Well, let's look at a really simple example. And I kid you not, this has happened on a resume that I've seen. So, I picked up a resume and looked at this person, and they've been a junior accountant somewhere. And then they've written underneath that, for the duties, performed accounting duties. I know that. That's not very helpful to a person that wants to hire you. You need to make sure that you have a good amount of detail. Because I want to know where your gaps are. I want to know what you've had experience at and what you haven't. This is way too general. Okay, so in helping you to flesh out your resume, you need to make sure that you have this kind of level of detail. Now, like I said, I'm an accountant, so I've tended to pick accounting examples. If you're wondering about other examples, come and have a chat with me afterwards, and we can try to work something out. But yeah, this is what I would want to see on a resume. So let's move on to some more do's. Oops, there we go. Write in first person. Does everyone know what that means? Write in first person? No? No, that's okay. Actually, can I ask, how many people are in the room that English is their second language? Yeah? Oh my God. Fair enough, yeah. No, I anticipated that. Look, one of the things about, I'm going to sidetrack for a second, one of the things about PDF is that the guys embrace cultural diversity, because we think that a cultural diversified workplace is much more effective than if everyone's the same, right? So this is one of the things we do focus on. All right, so let me explain right in first person. So third person would be me saying, my name's Andrew, right? So I would say, Andrew maintained the fixed assets register. First person is where I'm talking about myself. I maintain the fixed assets register. Does that make sense? Now the thing about your resume that you may not know is you don't use I. So you just drop it out. Okay? So instead of saying I maintain the fixed assets register, you just say maintained the fixed assets register. Now I understand sometimes these things get like, in actual fact, I lived in Korea for a while. So I had the same kind of experience some of you are having here, where the predominant language was not my first language. And I know the challenges that throws up. Okay, so all I can say is you've got to, again, give yourself the knowledge and practice. All right? So let's talk about my bugbear. This annoys me to no end. Spelling and grammar. If I pick up a resume, and this particularly happens in accounting and finance, and someone says in their resume, I have an eye for detail, and then there's spelling mistakes through their resume. That resume goes from here into here very quickly. All word processors have spell checkers, and they're pretty good these days. Compared to when I first started working, they're quite robust. A couple of things about it though. The first thing I'll say is spell check your resume, and before you send it off, just spell check it again, just to be doubly safe. Okay? The next thing is that this doesn't matter so much to me, but again, we've got to think about, we want to maximise your chance of being interviewed. That's what this is all about, right? American spelling. Some people don't like it in Australia. So make sure that your spell checker is on Australian or English, okay? Don't have it on American English, unless you know that that's okay. Again, for me, I don't mind so much, but some people it does annoy. So don't do that, don't put yourself at risk. Now grammar's a bit of a challenge when it comes to a resume, particularly if you're bullet pointing and you've got some formatting in there, because the grammar checker is going to pick up a whole bunch of stuff that's probably not wrong. And you know, from seeing the number of people in here where English is a second language, that's a challenge for you, right? Because you can't just blindly accept all the changes. You need to know whether you should be changing them or not. So what I suggest there is the next point. Get someone to read your resume. Now I know that seems really simplistic. You go, yes, of course, but you really should do that. And it's a great way to learn and get feedback. First and foremost, if you can find a peer or a colleague in the same industry, get them to review it because they're going to have the best feedback for you. If not, a family member or friend is perfectly fine. But for those of you that, again, English is your second language, if you've got some friends where they're native speakers, please get them to review it. Okay? Next thing is keep track of tense. Okay, so I'll explain this a little bit as well, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So, past tense, current tense. We talked about maintained the general ledger, past tense, or maintained the general ledger. This doesn't matter to me too much, but where it is important to some people, if it's your current job, you will write in current tense. If it's your previous work experience, you'll just write past tense. It's pretty straightforward, but it's something that's often overlooked. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? You're so quiet, I can't believe how quiet you are for the people. Moving on. Active voice. So the other thing to do is write in active voice. What's active voice? Look at an example. Again, another simple example, but just to demonstrate the point. Passive voice is the top one. Interim supervisor for 10 to 12 employees. Versus active voice, which is an action verb. Manage 10 to 12 employees as an interim supervisor. Which one do you think sounds better? Second one, right? Sounds like you're doing something. Yeah? So make sure you're using active voice, action verbs. Okay? So that's the end of the generic stuff. Let's talk about a couple of things you can do to give you an extra edge by tailoring your resume to a specific job opportunity. So the first one is use keywords on your resume. You might be going, what are keywords? So typically when you apply for a job opportunity, you've probably seen an advertisement, right? And in that advertisement, it will describe what the job is, what they want from you in terms of the tasks, and sometimes they even have in there their values, the values of the company, the corporate culture. Try to extract some of the best ones out of there. If they're not in your resume already, put them in. So an example would be, a very simple example would be teamwork. If they require someone that works well in teams, have that in your resume somewhere. You might have it already, and if you don't, it might be a matter of just rearranging one of your bullet points, or you might have just left it out. But you can pop it on there now that you know that it's relevant. So keywords. In addition to keywords, rearrange your bullet points. All of these things are geared towards making it super, super easy for the hiring manager to want to see you. So if they can get your resume and tick off, oh wow, you've got corporate culture, values, yes, that's a good fit. The next thing they're going to do is, because they're so busy, they tend to scan your resume. So rearrange the bullet points for each of your jobs so that the ones that are most relevant for that particular job opportunity are at the top. Because they might not even get through your entire resume before they make a decision. So you need to get all the really good stuff as close to the top of the resume as you can. Now the next thing, tailor your objective. Does anyone know what an objective is, or do we all know? No? Some resumes will have a career objective right at the beginning, and that can either be a short or long-term objective. So a short-term objective would be focused on whatever your next position might be. So junior accountant for a public practice accounting firm, right? Versus a longer-term objective, which would be, I'm looking to be a senior consultant in a marketing firm in the next 5 years. I'll be honest, I don't put objectives at the top of my resumes. I don't really need them. But if you think that that's going to give you that little extra edge, I suggest you put it in. And sometimes it's a little bit about testing, because it does depend on the industry you're in. Right, yeah, sorry. So the other thing I was going to say about tailoring your objective was you might actually be applying to more than one industry, let's face it, right? Sometimes it's tough and you're not sure where you want to go, especially when you're starting out. So you think, well, I'll try a few different things. I'll apply in a few different areas and just see what bites, right? So just be careful, because like we all do this. We will take something we've already got, and like our resume that we've already tailored, and we think, oh, that's a really good one. I can just drop that into this other job opportunity. But you don't want to have on there that I want to be a junior accountant in public practice and you're applying in the property industry. So just make sure you haven't done that, because that's right at the top of your resume and it's going to turn them off straight away. Okay. Now, just so you make the most out of recruiters, this also encompasses hiring managers as well. So as you start to go through your journey, and we'll talk more about getting feedback later, but I just wanted to earmark this here. Get some feedback. You're going to send out your resume. The people that are going to look at your resume, they look at lots of them. Lots and lots and lots. They're experts at it. They know what looks good. They know what doesn't look good. After you've sent it in, give them a call. Right? And I know some of you might be intimidated by that. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But yeah, I just want to make the point that there is a resource there that might be untapped. You might not be doing that, and that's a fantastic way to improve your resume. So let's talk about some don'ts. Now, most of these don'ts are actually what I believe are a product of people coming from different places and thinking that they need to have the same things from their home country on their resume here. I know, for example, when I lived in Korea, it is standard to have a picture on your resume. Of course, we don't do that. The only time you might do that is if you're a model. Is anyone a model? No. I like to think I am, but I'm not. So things like pictures, you don't have to put on there. And the other thing is that I want to talk about bias. And we often, in PDF, the topic of racism comes up, right? Now, I think that most people are not racist. But we all, through our lives, and this isn't just at work, but personally, to make sense of the world, you put things in the boxes, don't you? You differentiate. So a hiring manager, because he's time poor, he's going to go with what's comfortable. Right? Because it's easy. I don't have time to think about this. I want to go with what's easy. So that's the other reason why I don't suggest to put the list we're about to go through on your resume, because it could just create unconscious bias. It's not intentional, but again, let's maximise your chances of getting your foot through the door. Because once you've got your foot in the door and you sit in front of the person, it's a different story, right? Yeah? Okay. So we talked about pictures. I'll run through these quickly. This is a long presentation. Is everyone okay? Yep? Okay. Birthday, meaning age. So you don't have to tell anyone how old you are. And I'm not telling you how old I am. Religious preference, political affiliations, and no sex, no gender. So if you're male or female is irrelevant, and to be quite honest, it's very easy to tell most of the time, unless you have a non-gender specific name. We know whether you're male or female, so you don't need to put that up. Let's have a look at a few more. Marital status. It doesn't matter whether you're married or single. You'll be able to do your job, right? Current salary information. This is a bizarre one. I don't know why people do this. Some people will tell me what they're earning. I don't care. I know what I'm going to pay for the job that I'm applying for. So look, salary. The salary discussion will come up anyway. If you get to the interview process and they like you, you're going to talk about salary probably. Yeah. If it's not listed in the job advert, so this is just completely unnecessary. So next thing, I kind of like this one, but I want to emphasise, please be careful. Right? Personal email addresses. Quite often, people will use a personal email address as part of their contact details on their resume. Okay? But please don't use this. QChick for life, or what I term worse, Buffboy99. Okay? These are not professional. And for a lot of people, it's just a turn off. So if you don't have one already, I suggest you go out and get yourself an email address that you can use on your resume. It's a professional one. Now my name's quite common, so for me to go to Yahoo and just find Andrew Walsh, I'm not going to find it. So sometimes you're going to need to be a little bit creative. Personally, I like this second one, lim.h.david@gmail. Using dots, using middle initials, putting a last name first or first name first. Just play with it and find something that's suitable. Okay? Just not bad. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about email addresses as well further down in a different context, because they do actually impact your resume to different aspects. Yeah. So let's talk about a cover letter. Now we know that the resume, its objective is to get you an interview, and obviously a cover letter does that too. But a cover letter does a couple of other things for you that the resume can't. And the first thing is this: it demonstrates genuine interest. So in your resume, it's just about you. It's not really, apart from the tailoring we were talking about, it doesn't really talk to that job opportunity. Where in your cover letter, you can lead with, I'm very interested in this job opportunity. You know, express your enthusiasm for it. So that's the first thing it does. The next thing is it ties your resume to the opportunity, what I call skill matching. So skill matching is where, what we're doing, we're talking about features and benefits, right? So you've got these features you've listed in your resume, and now you're going to tell the hiring manager how they're going to benefit them in that particular role. So it allows you to do that. So let's actually talk about some of the things you should be doing in your cover letter. And look, I'm sorry, we're not going to have enough time to go through an example on screen of the cover letters, but I do have some copies of an example one you can take with you. So the first few I'm going to go through quick because they're the same as the resume. Spelling and grammar, we've talked about that. Keeping track of tense, using active voice, write in first person. So as opposed to your resume where you will drop off I, you use I in your cover letter. All right, so you'll say I maintained X. Length, 1 page and 1 page only. I don't know why, it just feels right. It's like the magic number, and that's a 1. It's nice to get a resume and just have that 1 page on the top that you can read quickly. Okay, structure. So although we don't have time to actually look at one, I wanted to go through a structure with you just to help you out. So let's look at that structure. And it's 4 paragraphs. The opening paragraph, it should just tell the employer what you want. Don't say I want a job, but that's your opportunity to express your interest. You know, I'm very interested in this job opportunity and I would love to explore it with you. Okay? The second paragraph, it outlines what you have to offer. So we're talking about the features of you, that's where this goes. But only put down possibly 2, 3, maximum 4 into that paragraph, and the ones that you think will sell you the best into that role. Then we talked about skill matching, so in the third paragraph you'll actually explain to the employer why you'd be of value. What is it about those features that you can then use in that role that's going to create the value for them? And then lastly, you're just going to thank them for the opportunity. And a lot of people miss this, and I think this is actually a good thing to do, which is let them know when you'd be available for an interview. All the time through your resume, through your cover letter, you want to make it as easy for them to want to hire you or work with you. So for me, when I used to do this, and I found someone that I was interested in and they had their availability times, it was great because I could go to my diary first, have a look, and see what times I could fit them in, and then I just call them up and we make the appointment like that. 20 seconds on the phone, I'm done. Okay? So let's have a look at more cover letter do's. And the next one is address the letter to a specific name. Sometimes people miss this, and I still don't know why. I think people, maybe they just get busy or they don't realise they should address it to the specific person. Most job ads will have a contact in there.
What if they don't use the
Yeah, so I'm gonna get to that. So if they don't, you can say dear sir or ma'am, or you can say to whom it may concern. Either of those are perfectly acceptable. Yeah, there are some occasions where they, for whatever reason, they fall silent on that, which I find, yeah, I don't think that's a good way to do it, but that happens. But yeah, look, just make sure you do address it to a person if there is some contact details there. And it's nice to receive it personally, like they've addressed it to me, right? It's nice. Next thing is use a business letter format. So again, I've got the template up the front. It's on the website, so you can have a look at what that looks like. But just remember, you're applying for a job. You're trying to be a professional. Use a business letter format. Don't write it as if you're writing to a family member or friend.
Does that include like headers and footers?
Yes. Yep. Correct. And the last thing with this is, and this is really just a tip, because you won't be able to do this all the time, but mind company websites for information. If you know the company that you're applying to, and you won't always know this, sometimes through Seek and other websites, it'll just be the recruiter, and they won't tell you who the company is until later. But if you know who the company is, have a look on their website, particularly for value statements, because if they're not in the ad, and you've got the value statements, and then you stick that into your cover letter, it makes you look pretty good, right? You have the same values as what the corporate culture does. So if you can pop a couple of those in there, that also helps. Plus, it's not a bad idea because if you do get to the interview stage, then it's good to know a few things from their website. You're going to talk about them in the interview. We talked about this before, so get someone to proofread it. This is probably, well, it's just as important as the resume, but with the cover letter, the flow. So going from one paragraph to the next, it's really important to make sure that reads well, the entire thing fits together. Okay? Last thing is use strong and decisive language. Now, for those of you who English is a second language, we'll go through a very simple example. So this is what I would call weak and indecisive. I am pretty interested in the position. It's kind of like, take it or leave it. Maybe, I might even turn up to the interview if he asks me, I'm not sure. Versus very strong and decisive language, and we've only changed one word. I am very interested in the position. Now, again, for those of you where English is a second language, maybe you don't know all the subtleties, and that's why it's good to have someone proofread it, right? And I know even from personal experience when I was in Korea, and it applies here too, what you write on paper versus when you're speaking, you get, when you're listening to me speak, you see my body language. You get to hear the intonation of my voice. That is not going to come through in a cover letter. So you need to be very selective about the words you're using. So let's talk about some cover letter don'ts. Use a template. Now I don't mean don't use a template at all, because I think for a lot of you, if you've ever written a cover letter, you will start with a template. But please, 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 I'm warning you now, do not get a template and just put your name on it and put the employee's name on it and don't change anything in the middle. Because chances are, more so with recruiters, but also with hiring managers, we've seen them before. So if we've seen it with someone else, we know that you're not that serious about the job. You couldn't be bothered to tailor your letter for this particular position. So while it's okay to use a template as a starting position, don't just take a template, throw your name on it and send it out. Now, if you are having a lot of trouble working out how to write a cover letter, the other thing I'd suggest you can do, get a few different examples and then just mix and match them together, just as a starting position, so that you've got something to work with that you can start your learning curve on. Next thing, so we talked about some of these things before about making sure that you don't leave details on there that you shouldn't, and I really hate this one. Sometimes I've got cover letters and I've known the previous job opportunity they've just applied for because they've left the old employee's details in there. That's a real big no-no. And what's worse is if it's a woman, I don't enjoy being called Tracy or Suzanne. So don't do that. Yeah, okay, right. So starting a letter with my name is. You don't need to do that. We know who you are. It's at the bottom of the letter, and it should be all over your resume anyway. So you can just lead straight in with, I'm very interested in this position. It's perfectly fine to do that. You don't have to tell them who you are. And this kind of goes to some of the things we were talking about before, but don't just rehash your resume onto your cover letter. Don't copy and paste that on. Right? This is an opportunity for you to tell them how excited you are, to show that you've thought about how you're going to fit into that role and what value you're going to bring. So take that opportunity. Don't just rehash your resume by copying and pasting it into the letter. And lastly, only focus on yourself. What do I mean by that? Some people get really enthusiastic and they don't mean it to sound this way, but they want to tell you everything about them. And how, all the experience I've had, except it goes through the entire letter. And then I'm just thinking, they just want to talk about themselves. They don't seem to really have any idea about this particular position. Right? It just comes off not feeling very nice to the person that's reading it. If you follow the structure we talked about before, you won't have that problem. So that's the end of cover letters. Doing pretty good for time, actually. Let's talk about social media. And the first thing I want to talk about is work versus social life. In an ideal world, your work and your social life are separate, right? And if you're doing a good job at work, it shouldn't matter what you do in your spare time. Quite frankly, some people, I don't want to know what you're doing, right? But all you're going to do is look in the media and you will see countless examples of people that have gotten into trouble, potentially lost their jobs because of something they put on Facebook. And it's gone out to the public domain. So you need to think really carefully about things like Facebook and other social media platforms. I'm going to pick on Facebook in particular just because I know that probably everyone in the room has Facebook at least, right? So the first thing I suggest you do is lock down your Facebook. Because I kid you not, and I have done this, whether it's right or wrong or ethical, it's open to debate. But if I'm interested in someone, and you were talking about their email addresses before, if I've got their email address, I might go check out their Facebook, and on a couple of occasions it's turned me off. And I haven't proceeded with looking at that person any further. So turn on your privacy settings, make sure that only friends can see you. Right? There are some other situations like LinkedIn, which we'll talk about, where that's a little bit different. But yeah, lock down all of your personal social media. So yeah, email addresses. Let's talk about that. So I just mentioned that they can be a way to find you on social media. So make sure that besides creating that new professional email address, because you've got a professional one, even if you have a professional looking one now, but it's tied to your Facebook or other social media, get a separate one. Okay? Yeah, I think there was something else there I was going to mention. No, we're going to talk about LinkedIn shortly. YouTube. This is really just out of interest. When I was putting together this presentation, I wanted to check a couple of things. I was trying to do a good job for you guys, and I called up a mate of mine I've known for 10 years, who is a recruiter, and he works for a global recruiting firm. And apparently, in the States, instead of requiring a cover letter in some of their offices for the middle management, upper management people, they're now asking them to send their resume in and do a 30-second YouTube video.
I got a job that I went for that they asked you to do a minute-long video to describe your fashion and make sure that you could work in a company. It's like a fashion company.
Fashion company, okay. So yeah, see that, I'll come back to that. I'll just take this question because there's something I want to say about that.
Yesterday I just did a final interview with Westpac, and they actually did a 30-minute, I think it was a 30-minute interview online using FaceTime.
FaceTime, yeah.
Yeah.
That's becoming quite common, whether it's FaceTime or Skype or something like that. You don't have to be in the same room anymore to do the interviews. But before you get to that place, because you say your 1 minute, is that part of? That's not part of the interview process. That's before you get to an interview. Is that right?
Yeah, before you get to an interview, so you put in your resume and then what you send.
Let me tell you why they do that. They're not. A lot of the time, it's actually not about, in this case, like the fashion. It's about soft skills. One of the cheeky things I used to do was if I was interested in someone and I wasn't sure about getting an interview, I would call them up on the phone and check some details. The reason why I was doing that was I actually wanted to check their soft skills. I wanted to see how they came across when they communicated. Okay, so that's probably the reason why they do that, because more and more these days was anyone at Owen's presentation last week? There's a couple of people. There's a great presentation last week. Actually, it's going to go up onto the PDF website soon. But he actually said, and I agree with him, that technical skills are not as important as soft skills. Now I know that's scary for some of you, particularly if English is still being it's a challenge at the moment. But you really need to practice and get out there. And all I can say really is practice, because your soft skills. And if you want to get further in your career, geez, most of the technical skills that I have, I don't use. It's all about managing people. So you really need to start to practice those communication skills. All right. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to see, and now I've heard that it's probably happening. I thought it was a couple of years away from being here. It might come a lot sooner. It might become a regular feature. Let's talk about LinkedIn. Does everyone know what LinkedIn is? Yeah. Everyone seen it? Yeah? Right. This is my very simple definition. It's Facebook for business people. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just want to explore in the next couple of slides a few things for you. And the first thing I want to explore is the opportunities. I think everyone should be on LinkedIn. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you get a job straight through LinkedIn, but there are job advertisements on there. And from talking to a friend of mine earlier this week, I found out that some companies only advertise on LinkedIn. So if you're trying to spread your wings and find as many jobs as you can, you're doing yourself an injustice if you're not on LinkedIn, because you're missing out on some potential job opportunities. So that's number one. Number two is, as you get into your career, and this has happened to me through LinkedIn, you will get headhunted. So the whole idea of LinkedIn, the reason why it was built, its revenue model, is all of us, we join, and then LinkedIn charges the recruiters to access all that information and find people to fill positions. That's the basic model, how it works. So you really do need to jump on now. Whether it's going to get you headhunted straight away, I don't know, but you will in the future if you invest in it. So the next thing is the next two opportunities. One is additional content over your resume. So the example I'm going to show you later, I've actually put the link for LinkedIn on the top of the resume. So if someone is really interested in you and they want to go that little bit further, they can then jump on LinkedIn, and there's things you can put on there that you typically wouldn't necessarily have on your resume. Right? So it's an opportunity to sell yourself a little bit more. And the last thing is network building. So ideally you should be coming to things like this, PDF and other networking functions, meet people, meet peers, people at the same level, people above, because in the future you don't know where that's going to go, but typically, and I know I found this, I found networking is one of the most effective ways of moving your career forward, more so than getting onto any website and just applying for jobs. Okay, so you can do this through the connections feature on LinkedIn. So what I would suggest is you come here, you meet people, and are you on LinkedIn? I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. So let's quickly talk about using LinkedIn. This is my advice for newbies. If you're not on there yet, get a profile now. Just start one. Doesn't have to be complicated. Now we've talked about putting your resume together. If you do that first, that's a lovely starting position for LinkedIn. You can just copy in your resume. Okay, just a starting position until you get comfortable with it. Then, the other advice I have for you, and this might not really pertain to anyone, but just in case, if there's anything sensitive on your resume that you don't really want out in the World Wide Web, less than told is okay. So I know on my resume, and I've shared with you tonight, the company I work for, the facilities management company, we doubled their turnover, and I told you the figures. Now it's okay in this environment, but I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't put down the profit that we made onto my LinkedIn page, because competitors for that company could go and look at that information. Does that make sense? So if you need to, just take out a few of those really sensitive details. Plus you don't want to upset your previous employers, because they might not give you a good reference when you Now, if you're advanced or you've been on LinkedIn for a while, there's a summary feature that you can put at the beginning of your profile if you haven't used it. 1 to 2 paragraphs. It's a great way to sell. Okay, and it's going to be on top of what you would normally have in your resume. So that's the first thing. Next thing, I really like this one, testimonials. Testimonials are like references, but they're just someone that's written something nice about you. It will sit on your profile, and then if someone's really interested in you, they've got the link on your resume, they go to your LinkedIn profile, and then they see who has given you some recommendations. A couple of things about that. First is, if you're going to get a testimonial, make sure the person you're getting it from is generally someone you've worked with. Otherwise, it kind of looks a bit suspicious. The next thing is make sure that person has a good LinkedIn profile themselves. Because I know what I do is I will click on that person that's given the recommendation, the testimonial, and I want to see a bit about them. And it's about social proof. Do you know what social proof is? So if this person over here is pretty nice guy, and they introduce me to this person over here, by extension, they're probably nice too. So make sure that they've got a nice, a good profile set up. Okay. Oh, so I'm going to go back. One other thing, people get really busy. So if you're asking your boss for a testimonial, there's nothing wrong with saying to them, I'll write it for you. Right? You offer to write it for them. You say, look, you get final call on it. You can edit it. If there's anything that you don't like, you can take it out. But I'll write it for you. You're just making it easy for them. Okay? And we've talked about this before, so connection network building. Okay? It's a very powerful tool. So where can you submit your resume? We'll run through this pretty quickly. There's one I want to talk about at some length. Recruiters, talked about that. So you can go direct through recruiters. Seek, Career One, and we've talked about LinkedIn. And there's a few other websites out there, but they're the main ones. Unless I think there's one I've missed, Monster. Is Monster still around?
Indeed.
Indeed? Okay. So you guys know what they are. Okay, good. Direct to companies. So we're talking about before, going on a company website. Some big companies will actually have their own employment portals. So you can go direct to them and have a look on their website and see what opportunities are available. Okay. This is the one I want to talk about quickly. Cold calling companies. Do we know what cold calling is? Kind of. Some of us don't. So that's where there is no job opportunity, but we've just decided to contact that company and find out whether there could be one, or could we just submit a resume and make contact with them so that in the future, if something pops up, maybe we can be considered. The reason why I want to talk about this is I know some of you probably have trouble getting jobs, right, at the moment. And I actually found this very effective. When I left Ernst & Young, I used to work in media and entertainment, and I moved straight into property. Now, most of the time, if I went through a recruiter, they didn't want to talk to me because it was too hard to sell. So what I ended up doing was, and I'll talk through is everyone okay if I just quickly talk through the process that I used? So I went, right, I'm going to work in property. So I got online and I gathered together all of the big companies that I knew or found out through Google that operated, and particularly in Sydney, because that's where I was at the time. Then I went onto their websites and I had a bit of a read, because some of them I was interested in, some of them not so interested in. I made a short list of the ones I was most interested in to start with. And I had a look on their website again. Did they have a portal? If not, the next step was to call the company. And I'd call them up and I'd ask them if they have a HR department. Can I speak to their HR? And I would very politely say, look, I'm really interested in your company. I'd love to come and work for you. Now, I don't know if you've got any job opportunities at the moment, but would it be all right if I submitted my resume to you just so you could have a look? All right. Now, actually, I think I must have called about maybe 20, 25 companies, and I got a bite, just one. But as I say, if you want to win the lottery, you've got to buy a ticket, right? Otherwise you can't. So it is more of a long shot, if you like, but if you want to explore some other ways to potentially get a job, that's one way you can do it. And again, talking about, I can't emphasize enough the importance of networking. So the person that actually gave me the job, I'm still friends with them now. And that's the great thing about networking here, is that some of these people will just form part of your business network, but then there's other people here that you'll become friends with. Next, family and friends. This is often overlooked. It doesn't hurt to ask. Again, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. Just ask them. You don't say, give me a job, but you can say, do you know anyone that's looking for someone? The worst thing that's going to happen is they say, no, I don't, and you're back to where you started. And this one, so again, emphasising networking, right? But this is for future opportunities. So what do I mean by that? So what's your name? Millie? Andrew. Hi, how are you? Where do you work?
Oh, I'm the girl.
Are you?
Yeah.
Can I get a job with you? No, it's a bit off-putting, right? If you just walk up to someone you've only just met and ask them for a job, you're probably not going to get a good response. So the networking, the way I want to emphasise it to you is that you're networking for future opportunities, not just now, but you want to expand your network. So get people to, allow people to get to know you and you get to know them. And later, if they like you, they might call you out of the blue anyway, and you could have a job somewhere else. They'll just call you because they thought about you, because you've got a good relationship with them. So that's the kind of networking you should be working towards. So let's talk about, if you've submitted your resume, about getting some feedback. And also a few other benefits to calling up the hiring manager or recruiter after you've submitted your resume. Okay. So what are the benefits? So the first thing is you're affirming your genuine interest again. So you did it in the cover letter, but now you're going that extra step to call them up and say, look, I'm so interested that I'm contacting you. I want to see how things are going. Now you might not say, can you tell me where things are at? But you might say something more polite like, I just wanted to understand the process and could you give me some feedback? Right? You've got another source of getting some feedback. That's how you're going to stand out. So when that telephone call's finished, if it's been a good telephone call, then you're going to be front and centre in that person's mind. And that's going to give you that little bit of an extra edge again. It's also a pre-interview without being pre-interview. So it allows you to demonstrate your soft skills. So you're already making the hiring manager or recruiter more comfortable with you. You've been able to convey to them your attitude and how well you can communicate. And the last thing is, and we've talked about this before, feedback. The reason why I popped their job or industry specific is you probably should ask an open-ended question. I just want some feedback, and let them tell you whether they're just going to give you some general feedback or whether they're going to relate it right back to the job. And if they do, and then you get an interview, that's fantastic, because you've got a little bit of an insider edge, some knowledge that potentially you know exactly what they're looking for. So how do you do this? How do you actually follow up? So these are my suggestions. This is how I do it, and it's worked well for me over the years. The first thing is 1 to 2 days after you've submitted your resume. Do not call them same day. Firstly, it sounds desperate, right? So you don't want to sound desperate. And the second thing is that you might annoy the hiring manager, right? Because they're very busy. They might not have even seen your resume in their inbox yet. Let them have some time to actually cast their eye over it, and then give them a call. Now the call timing. So you know it's 1 to 2 days after, but when during the day do you call? My suggestion, mid-morning or mid-afternoon. Don't call someone first thing in the morning. They're settling into their job for the day, and it tends to be a bit disruptive. Lunchtime, even if someone's a really hard worker and they're going to eat lunch at their desk, they can't eat and talk to you at the same time, right? Not possible. So most people still need a little bit of a break, right? And at the end of the day, that's the most dangerous time to call, because people want to go home. And what's totally worse is if someone's had a terrible, terrible day, and then they're going to deal with you, they're probably going to associate their terrible day with you. So don't do that. My suggestion, the best time to call is mid-morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock. That's when I would do it. Okay? Does anyone find that a bit nerve-wracking to do something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the point is to get open.
Yes, so you've got to get over your nerves, but how do you do that? So one of the ways you can do that is write some short scripts for yourself. Before you get on the phone, and I've done this, so all the things I'm telling you, this is not like, I'm not telling you to eat the cooking I eat, this is the same stuff I would do. Write a short script, write the questions out you want to ask, and try to anticipate what they might ask you in return, so you've got a little bit of a reply. Okay? Now, if you get voicemail, cap it to 30 seconds. Don't go longer than 30 seconds because, again, time-poor people are just not going to want to deal with that. Write a script for your voicemail as well if you need to. And the last thing, which we've talked about a lot, which is how to improve, practice, practice, practice. That's the only way to do it. And look, in your lives, beyond career path, whatever you're good at, how did you get good at it? So I know it can be intimidating and there's an emotional factor there, but you know, if you want to get good at it, you've got to do it. Now, we're just at 1 hour, and luckily we're up to the example resume. We've got about 15 minutes to go. I can see some tired faces out there. I appreciate that you spend all this time in this room. It's a little bit warm in here. Are we okay to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Example resume. I just want to show you this first. This was a survey done by Robert Half. It was in the United States, but it talks about the style of resume. So most people, when they're asked, the senior executives were asked, what is their preference for a resume? They prefer chronological. And then a few people preferred functional, and then there was a few people less that had no preference. What's the difference between chronological and functional? Well, your chronological is simply your work experience organised by date, whereas your functional is to do with your skill set and industry experience, and it has no regard for what particular positions you did. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is, again, we want to maximise your chances of getting an interview. So I've picked an example where it's both. It's what I call a hybrid. So you can see this is the chronological stuff starting down here, but above that is actually the functional. So let's just talk through this top to bottom. The first thing I want to point out is, does it look nice and clean and easy to read? Yeah? So that's what you want to aim for. Easy font, well formatted, if I had to pick that up quickly, I could get to grips with that person in 30 seconds. Now, if we work our way top to bottom, at the top is the person's details. That will appear on every page. That's in the header. All right, and it includes their address, their telephone number, their email address, a nice business email address, and their LinkedIn in this case. Now, actually, before I go any further, the thing is there's no one right answer. There's lots of different answers you could use and still get yourself into an interview, right? There's many different formats of resume you could use. This is just one I find very effective. So, key industry experience, and then areas of expertise. If for whatever reason you don't have any of this yet, particularly if you're a student, you wouldn't have had professional experience yet, you just drop this out. You don't need that in there. You just start from here. And you'll drop off, obviously, the professional experience there. Just have experience. In the experience area, which is the start of the chronological, on the left-hand side, the date. First thing about the date is make sure you have the month. Some resumes I've gotten, they've just got the year, and it's totally annoying because I don't know whether you, for example, you could have worked from December 2013 to January 2014, but if you got 213, 214, it could be 2 years, it could be 2 months. I have no idea. And that's a real frustration for hiring managers, and they tend to throw those resumes to the side, so make sure you've got the month. The next thing I suggest is, besides having the name of the company, don't assume that everyone you're sending your resume to knows what those companies do. So just have a couple of lines describing what they do so that the person can get a flavour for the company that you're working with. And then lastly on the on the right is the location where you're working. Below that is actually the specific details of your job. So in this case, the title of the position, and then underneath a brief description of what that person was doing in terms of their duties. Now, you probably already noticed that this isn't bullet pointed. So this is why I did that intentionally, just so that I want to drive home the point there's not one right answer. You can bullet point this, that's no problem. So bullet point it, don't bullet point it, but you don't want to have line after line after line after line. 2 lines is absolute maximum. And then of course below this we've got some selected accomplishments which are bullet pointed. If you are starting out, the selected accomplishments can also be a bit difficult. That's okay. Drop it out and just bullet point your specific duties that you were doing in the jobs that you've had. Okay? Next thing is don't have gaps. Don't have gaps in your resume. If you weren't working, so this person, for example, was doing some travel and study. Put it in. Because a hiring manager, if they see a gap, they kind of tend to assume the worst. A lot of them. They'll think, oh, maybe you had some problems there. Is that why you dropped it out? Like, why is there a gap? It makes them feel uncomfortable. Right? Now, there might be some circumstances that are very personal, why you've had a gap in your employment. Just put personal reasons. It's okay to do that. That's no problem. But at least they know, okay, they did some, they had to take care of some personal things and now they're being back to work. So this is a 3-page resume. We'll go through the second page. The reason why I picked this particular format was because I was trying to hedge my bets, because I didn't know how many of you were closer to the beginning of your career and how many were further on. So this is a person that's probably been working for about 3 to 4 years. More of the same, so I won't go through this, but I'll just point out again formatting. Back here you've got very solid lines to distinguish the different areas, and then you have these lighter lines to show that there's just a break between the different jobs you've done. Okay. Last page, technology, and you can have more than software. It depends on the industry again that you're in. People list out other kinds of things that they've skills that they've got in the technology area. I've just listed software here. When it comes to software, Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, you don't actually have to list them. The time when I would suggest, because it's kind of assumed that you have some level, basic level. Does everyone know how to use equally? Maybe not PowerPoint, but Word and Excel. They've had some facility with it, yeah? Yeah. But if you have intermediate or advanced skills, please put it down. In fact, in the accounting world, that is much more valuable to me than knowing whether you can use an accounting system. Because I can teach you that, but Excel will be used in a much more broad range of tasks. And the last thing here is education, and it has the same format as your work experience. So it makes it more intuitive. So as a person goes through, oh yes, okay, we're at education now, but oh, it's the same format as the experience. It's very easy to read. Okay. Again, this is at the top of every page. The person's details, top of every page. Who's that? You. When I had more hair. The reason why I'm showing you this was my first part-time job. I worked at David Jones. I was 17 at that point in time. But I'm showing you that because of a dirty word, which is that. So we've talked a lot about all of the technical things and the things that you can do to improve your resume. But I want to talk about the psychological part. When I was 16, I decided I wanted to go get a part-time job. And I asked my parents, can I go and get a part-time job? And they said yes, finish your school certificate and you can go get yourself a summer job. So off I went in my first suit with my resume down to David Jones' HR department, because back then email didn't really exist like it does now. And I filled out my form and I popped it on and I gave it to the person behind the counter. And I went home. And a week and a half later, I got a letter in the post from David Jones and they said, thank you very much for your application, but unfortunately you were unsuccessful. This was the first job I'd ever applied for. And it really broke my heart and it hurt my confidence. Now I think we've all had that happen, right, at some point. No's part of life. We're just not talking about career now, but no's just part of life. Is there anyone that's never heard no in here? That's probably a better question. Right? We've all heard it at some point in time. But you have to realise that it's just part of life and that you've got to move on and you take some feedback and you learn what you can from the no and you improve. And then you can turn that from no to this nice word, yes. Now I'm not going to tell you how I actually got to work at David Jones during this presentation. If you want to ask me afterwards, I can tell you about it. But I just want to drive that home that this is as much psychological as it is anything else. And all the stuff I've given you tonight is geared around maximising your chances of getting your foot through the door. So what I want to leave you with, does everyone know who this guy is? I'm a big fan of basketball. So this is Kobe Bryant. For those of you who don't know who this is one of the best players in the National Basketball Association of America at the moment. And the headline here, late last year, Kobe Bryant broke the record for most missed field goals. Not most in, most missed. And he's one of the best players. He knows that for every no he gets, it's a chance to improve, and that next time he can turn that no into a yes. Okay? And guess what? There's a thing here. I think everyone knows who this is. Right? One of the greatest basketball players of all time, and he's at number 6. He's at number 6. So, through the process of applying for jobs, don't lose heart. Keep going, keep improving. Hopefully some of the things that I've given you tonight will be very useful to you. And I just want to say thank you very much for having me. We're at the end. It was a long journey.